So I want you to imagine carrying a bowl, right? And it is brimful of oil right to the very edge. You're walking through this incredibly chaotic, crowded street.
Okay, setting the scene. I like it.
Yeah, and up ahead, there's this beautiful woman singing and dancing, and she's drawing this massive, shoving crowd. The noise is just deafening.
Sounds pretty distracting, yeah.
It is, but here's the catch. There's a man walking just inches behind you, and he has a drawn, razor-sharp sword.
Oh, wow. Okay, the stakes just went way up.
Exactly, because if you spill a single drop of that oil, like just because you glanced at the crowd or got distracted by the singing, he is going to instantly cut off your head.
That's a terrifying visual. But it completely snaps you to attention, doesn't it?
It really does. And welcome to the Deep Dive, everyone. Today we are exploring what it actually takes to conquer modern distraction. Because, the stakes for your attention today are incredibly high.
They really are. And that sword analogy is actually the perfect entry point for our mission today. We are looking at a system that is, well, it's over 2.5 millennia old.
Right, from classical Buddhist texts.
Exactly. But the crazy thing is, it provides this unparalleled blueprint for navigating our modern, notification-driven, hyper-distracted world. We're unpacking the 5 spiritual faculties.
And we have a really fascinating stack of sources to guide us through this deep dive today. We're pulling from ancient discourses of the Buddha, like the Sakya Sutta, alongside modern interpretations from scholars like Thich Nhat Hanh.
Yeah, bringing the ancient into the present.
Exactly. And to really ground all of this ancient wisdom in the reality of your daily life, we're synthesizing it with Cal Newport's modern productivity blockbuster Deep Work.
Which is such a brilliant crossover because ultimately the challenge of achieving focus as a modern knowledge worker, it's the exact same psychological challenge those ancient monks were trying to solve.
It totally is. And, the terminology itself kind of gives away how seriously they took this stuff.
Well, absolutely. In the West, when we hear the phrase spiritual faculties, we tend to picture something very, gentle.
Right, like passively sitting on a cushion, hoping to feel peaceful, burning some incense.
Yeah, exactly. But in the original Pali language, which is the language of these ancient scriptures, the word for these faculties is indriya. And that word, it derives directly from the ancient Vedic god Indra.
Which completely flips the script, because Indra, he wasn't some gentle figure. He was the god of control.
Right, a warrior deity. He vanquished demons, he ruled over the heavens. It's a very dominant energy.
So the texts are signaling right away that these 5 faculties, which are faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom, they are not passive, delicate traits.
No, not at all. They are active, potent weapons.
Right. You cultivate them to violently conquer the destructive, scattered forces of your own mind.
They are literal tools of mental dominion. But, to actually use those tools to protect your attention, we have to look at the mechanics of what they actually are.
Because Western translations have kind of severely warped a few of these concepts over the years, haven't they?
Oh, massively. And the first one is probably the biggest offender, sada, which usually gets translated as faith.
Yeah, and in English, faith almost always implies blind devotion. Like believing in something without proof or even actively ignoring evidence just to maintain a belief.
Right, which completely contradicts core Buddhist philosophy.
Exactly. When I was looking through our sources, my mind immediately went to the Kama Sutta, which is this really famous discourse on critical thinking.
A foundational text.
The Buddha explicitly tells his followers, do not accept things just because they're written in a book or handed down by tradition. You are supposed to test everything yourself.
Right, be your own laboratory.
Exactly. So I was looking at this and thinking, how does a system built on empirical testing start with faith?
Well, because sada is fundamentally mischaracterized when we call it blind belief. The sources describe it much more accurately as verified confidence.
Verified confidence. I like that phrasing.
Yeah, it's like a working hypothesis based on preliminary evidence. One of the Pali commentaries uses this great analogy of a patient visiting a doctor, just to explain how this mechanism works in your brain.
Oh, right. So if you're sick and you go to a specialist, the doctor examines you, looks at your history, and gives you a diagnosis and a treatment plan.
Exactly.
Right.
Now, you haven't taken the medicine yet. You aren't cured.
Right. You lack absolute proof that the treatment is actually going to work.
But the diagnosis perfectly describes your symptoms. The doctor's logic is totally sound. So you have enough of this verified confidence in the process to actually swallow the first pill.
That makes so much sense. That's sada.
Right.
Yeah.
Because if you sit there and demand 100% absolute proof before you even try the medicine, You just remain paralyzed. You stay sick.
You need that initial calculated trust just to generate the momentum to begin the work.
Precisely. But, that initial trust just provides the spark. A spark doesn't keep the engine running.
Which requires the second faculty, right? Energy, or virya. And I want to be clear here, this isn't just like drinking a lot of espresso and feeling wired.
No, definitely not caffeine-induced jitters.
In the psychological framework of these texts, energy is the literal drive to push forward. It's the active exertion of the will when the work gets difficult or boring.
It is the cognitive fuel. When your brain wants to default to the path of least resistance, virya is the conscious effort you summon to stay engaged with a really difficult task.
But raw, unfiltered energy can be incredibly dangerous if it isn't directed.
Oh, it's chaotic.
Yeah.
Which brings us back to the man with the bowl of oil representing the third faculty, mindfulness, or sati.
And this is another one that gets totally misunderstood today. The modern wellness industry has watered mindfulness down to like taking a deep breath and noticing the clouds.
Yeah, just kind of chilling out.
But the bowl of oil metaphor illustrates this hyper-vigilant, almost protective awareness.
Yes, you are carrying this oil. You hear the singing girl, you feel the crowd shoving you, but you do not let your attention adhere to them.
And you don't try to fight them either. You are just precisely anchored to the present moment because your literal survival depends on it.
Exactly. From a neurological standpoint, sati acts as a continuous monitoring system. It watches the raw data of your sensory experience, the sounds, the stressful thoughts, the physical sensations.
And it prevents your brain from getting hijacked by them. It stands guard.
It stands guard, yeah. And when you maintain that intense protective awareness, it allows the fourth faculty to emerge, concentration, or samadhi.
I really like to think of concentration as a magnifying glass.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, like if you leave a magnifying glass on a piece of paper under just scattered sunlight, nothing happens. The energy is diffuse.
Right.
But if you adjust the angle and you unify those scattered rays into a single, steady beam, you can start a fire. Concentration is the unification of the mind.
You're taking the dozen different anxieties and tasks that are competing for your attention, and you're condensing them into a single point of focus.
And holding that unified focus requires immense cognitive stability.
It really does. And when the mind is stabilized by concentration, the final faculty naturally arises wisdom, or panna.
Now, wisdom in this context has nothing to do with, like, memorizing trivia or accumulating facts, right?
No, not at all. It is clear discernment. It is the ability to see the mechanics of reality as they actually are, stripping away all the delusions our brains constantly project.
Because our brains are, evolutionarily wired to categorize everything as a threat or a reward. Like, this is good, this is bad, this person is against me.
Exactly. And wisdom interrupts that neurological default. It allows you to look at a situation and see a continuous chain of cause and effect, rather than just a permanent state or a personal attack.
It's the ultimate cognitive override. So you have these 5 tools: faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom.
But reading through the commentaries, the most crucial insight here is that this is not a static list.
Right.
It is a highly dynamic, moment-by-moment ecosystem that operates in real time.
Let's actually map this onto a scenario you might face today, because I think that helps visualize it.
Let's do it.
Imagine you're trying to execute some deep work. You've blocked off 2 hours to draft this really complex strategy document.
Okay, deep in the zone.
Right. And 10 minutes in, you make the mistake of glancing at your phone and you see a highly passive-aggressive Slack message from a colleague, basically undermining your whole project.
Oh man, the worst.
Instantly, your cortisol spikes. Your chest tightens. Your immediate impulse is to just abandon the strategy document and fire back a devastating multi-paragraph response.
We all know that exact physiological response.
Yeah.
The brain senses a social threat, and it just prepares for war.
Yep. So let's look at how the 5 faculties deploy to actually conquer that impulse. First, mindfulness acts.
Right. It allows you to observe that sudden spike in heart rate and the sensation of anger without becoming completely consumed by it. You simply note anger is present instead of letting the anger dictate your actions.
You are the man with the oil bowl. You see the distraction, you acknowledge the threat, but you don't spill the oil. You hold your position.
And because you haven't reacted, wisdom steps in. Wisdom analyzes the chain of cause and effect.
It calculates that escalating a Slack war is just going to destroy your morning, ruin your focus, and ultimately cause you way more professional suffering.
But, knowing it's a bad idea is rarely enough to actually stop the human ego from defending itself.
Oh, totally. We've all sent the email we knew we shouldn't send.
Exactly. And that is where faith is required. You must lean on your verified confidence, perhaps born from past mistakes, that stepping away from the keyboard and letting the anger metabolize is genuinely the superior path.
You trust the process of restraint.
You trust the process.
Yeah.
But even with that trust, you still have to physically override your nervous system.
Yeah.
And that takes energy.
Right. You have to summon the gritty, active effort to close the laptop, stand up, and literally walk away from the digital conflict.
And finally, concentration is what allows you to return to your desk 10 minutes later, reunify your scattered attention, and sink back into writing that strategy document.
Without just replaying the colleague's insult on an endless loop in your head.
Exactly. The sequence is so elegant. But the texts actually contain a massive warning label regarding this system.
Yes, the balancing philosophy. This is huge.
They emphasize that you cannot simply turn all 5 dials up to maximum output and expect to achieve mental dominion.
Right. If you over-apply one faculty without its specific counterpart, the entire psychological ecosystem just crashes.
The framework pairs the faculties together to regulate each other, which is just a brilliant bit of ancient psychology. Let's look at the first pair, faith and wisdom. They exist on a seesaw.
Okay, so if I crank my faith dial all the way up, but I completely ignore wisdom, my practice degrades into blind, credulous devotion.
Right. You become gullible.
I'll follow any guru or buy any productivity supplement because I have absolutely no discernment to filter out the nonsense.
But the inverse is equally paralyzing. If you possess massive wisdom but severely lack faith, you fall into the trap of dry, cynical intellectualism.
Oh, I know people like this.
We all do. You see all the angles, you understand the mechanics of the philosophy perfectly, and you can endlessly critique everyone else's flaws.
But because you lack the confidence to actually try the methods yourself, you never commit.
Exactly. You endlessly analyze the path, but never take a single step on it. Wisdom requires faith to initiate action. Faith requires wisdom to navigate reality.
Okay, so the second pair regulating each other is energy and concentration.
Yes.
And if I am overflowing with energy but I lack concentration, my effort just becomes frantic and chaotic. We see this all the time in modern offices, right?
Constantly. People rushing from meeting to meeting, answering emails at hyperspeed.
Just experiencing intense agitation but accomplishing absolutely zero deep work. It's pure restlessness.
Conversely, if you develop deep concentration without sufficient energy to sustain it, the mind sinks into lethargy.
You become heavy, dull, prone to sloth. Like you might be staring at a single spreadsheet cell for 20 minutes, but your cognitive drive has completely flatlined.
Right. So you have these two pairs on their seesaws.
Wait, so where does mindfulness fit into this? Because it isn't paired with anything.
Mindfulness is the chief supervisor. It hovers above the other 4, constantly monitoring the telemetry of your mind.
So it's like the control tower.
Exactly. If mindfulness detects that your energy is spiking and turning into agitation, it actively signals for more concentration to ground the system.
Oh, wow. And if it notices you becoming cynical, it signals for more faith. It's the real-time equalizer.
It is. And the danger of an imbalance here is illustrated in a rather, brutal story from the ancient texts about a monk named Suaya.
Oh, right. This story is intense. Suaya was so fiercely determined to achieve enlightenment that he practiced walking meditation back and forth until the soles of his feet physically burst open and bled.
He maxed out his energy dial and completely broke the instrument.
And the Buddha did not praise him for his extreme dedication, which you might expect.
No, not at all. Knowing that Soen had been a talented musician in his previous life, the Buddha asked him a practical question. He said, "When the strings of your lute are wound too tight, is the instrument playable?"
And Suaya said no.
"When the strings are too loose, is it playable?" Again, Suaya said no. The Buddha explained that the strings must be tuned to the middle way, neither strained to the point of snapping, nor slack to the point of silence.
But that ancient advice hits a massive wall when we collide it with modern corporate culture.
How do you mean?
Well, today we structurally reward the guy with bleeding feet, We glorify the hustle.
Oh, absolutely. The grind set.
Right. If a listener's boss is demanding 80-hour work weeks and praising extreme burnout, how is tuning your lute strings to the middle way not just going to be perceived as an excuse for laziness?
Well, that is the ultimate modern friction point. But the texts argue, and cognitive science actually backs this up, that operating with strings wound too tight is incredibly inefficient over the long term.
Because you eventually break.
Exactly. Brute forcing your way through an 80-hour week degrades your cognitive capacity, ruins your decision-making, and guarantees an eventual collapse. Tuning to the middle way is not about working less, it is about working with sustainable precision.
Right. Maximum effort without concentration or wisdom is just frantic thrashing.
Precisely. Which perfectly transitions us to the next stage of this system. Because when you actually manage to tune your strings and balance these pairs over a long period of time, the texts describe a structural change in your mind.
Okay.
The 5 faculties, the Indriya, evolved into the 5 strings, or bala.
Right. The Pali commentaries describe this as a fundamental shift in resilience. The qualities are identical: faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, wisdom, but their structural integrity changes entirely.
But I need a mechanical breakdown of this because, honestly, it sounds like a simple promotion in title. Like if the 5 qualities are exactly the same, what physically differentiates a faculty from a strength?
Okay, so think of it this way. A faculty is actively fighting to control its sphere of influence. It is working against opposing forces like the hindrances of ill will, chronic doubt, or extreme distraction.
So it's engaged in a struggle.
Right. When your mindfulness can be knocked offline by a sudden loud noise or a rude email, and you have to consciously fight to regain focus, it is operating as a faculty.
I see.
But it becomes a strength when it is utterly unshakable. A chaotic environment no longer disturbs your observation. The opposing forces simply bounce off you.
The Sikita Sutta uses a great metaphor to explain this transition, describing a river with an island situated right in the middle.
Right, but I want to adjust how we look at that metaphor to really understand the mechanics of a strength.
Okay, go for it.
Think of the island as a massive obstacle in your life, a major career crisis, or a devastating distraction.
Got it. Now, if the river's current is weak, operating merely as a faculty, it crashes into the island.
Exactly. The water churns, splits, and violently struggles to navigate around the rocks. It's fighting the obstacle.
But if you have spent years cultivating these qualities, the river becomes swollen. It builds massive, backed-up momentum.
Yes, and when a river that powerful hits the island, it doesn't split or churn. It completely subsumes the obstacle. The water rises and flows effortlessly over the top of the island as if it isn't even there.
The obstacle still exists, but your mental momentum, your strength, renders it irrelevant.
That is the difference between Indriya and Bala.
And bringing that unshakable momentum into our modern economy is where Cal Newport's book, Deep Work, becomes so crucial to this deep dive.
Because the modern knowledge worker's brain is facing an environment specifically engineered to drain that river dry.
Newport introduces a concept called the principle of least resistance. In the modern workplace, we often lack clear metrics for what makes our work truly valuable.
So, left to its own devices, the human brain defaults to whatever is easiest and most visible in the moment.
We choose the performative busyness, right?
Exactly. Instantly replying to Slack messages, attending pointless meetings, constantly refreshing our email. Newport categorizes this as shallow work.
It requires very little cognitive effort and is easily replicated.
The danger is that a culture of constant connectivity forces us into a state of frenetic shallowness. And synthesizing this with our Buddhist texts, this shallow state is a direct, systematic assault on the faculty of concentration.
And the terrifying part of Newport's research is that this damage isn't just temporary.
No, it's not.
If you spend your entire day frantically context switching between tabs and notifications, you don't just lose focus in that hour, you permanently reduce your neurological capacity to perform deep, concentrated work.
You are essentially training your lute strings to lose their elasticity.
To combat this and achieve deep work, which Newport defines as professional activities performed in a state of distraction-free concentration that push your cognitive capabilities to their absolute limit, you have to aggressively activate your ancient faculties.
You need a massive surge of virya, or energy, to actively reject the modern culture of connectivity. I mean, it actually takes more effort to ignore your phone than to check it.
It really does. And in the ancient commentaries, mindfulness is often compared to the gatekeeper of a walled town.
I love this imagery. The gatekeeper stands at the entrance, recognizing the genuine citizens and letting them pass, while forcefully blocking the bandits, spies, and invaders from entering the city.
Today, your attention is that walled town. Mindfulness must act as your gatekeeper against what Newport calls the metric black hole of social media and shallow demands.
It stands at the gates of your perception and analyzes every ping. It says, this calendar invite is useful. It may enter. This infinite scrolling algorithm is a bandit trying to loot my cognitive reserves. It is denied.
Without that gatekeeper, the bandits just swarm the city. You cannot reach the intense concentration required for deep work if mindfulness hasn't secured the perimeter.
And you cannot sustain the effort without energy.
Right. And you will never even attempt the hard, uncomfortable work if faith hasn't given you the verified confidence that deep focus produces immense value.
And if wisdom hasn't shown you the utter emptiness of shallow distraction,
The entire psychological ecosystem must function in perfect harmony. It is ancient spiritual technology perfectly mapped onto modern cognitive survival.
which brings us back to you listening to this right now. The 5 spiritual faculties are not just a passive list of virtues to memorize.
No, they are the active controls of your own mind.
By tuning your lute strings of effort and concentration, by upgrading your faith from blind belief to verified confidence, you build the momentum required to subsume the islands of distraction in your life.
And that leads to a final, really provocative convergence between ancient Buddhism and modern neuroscience.
How is it?
Both disciplines agree on one terrifying, but also liberating truth. Your brain literally constructs your reality based entirely on what you pay attention to.
Wow. So the things you allow past the gatekeeper become the actual building blocks of your worldview.
Exactly. If you spend your day focused on fractured, shallow, anxiety-inducing distractions, you inevitably construct a draining, fractured world.
The 5 faculties are the lens through which you filter reality. So the question you have to answer today is this. What kind of world are you constructing right now simply by choosing where you place your attention next?
Are you letting the dark forces of distraction breach the walls of your mind? Or are you standing at the gates, ready to take control?
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Take these ancient tools, tune your strings, and secure your gates.